Hello, Sheridan. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Sheridan Student Spotlight, a show where we put the spotlight on Sheridan students, their achievement, and their program. Today, our guest is a super cool illustration student. His name is Colin.
Hello.
Yeah, tell me about yourself, dude.
Hi, I'm Collin Carriere. I just finished my first year in illustration, but I've been at Sheridan for 3 years doing art fundamentals, and then the second year of VCA, finally getting into illustration after a few years of trying.
That's nice. And so, how was first year illustration?
It was really good. I think it was definitely very difficult, especially coming from the other programs, which had a lot, but I stacked a lot of work and like extra things on top of me this semester, and just the work that is given is a lot more intense compared to at least the other things that I was given.
So, what was your expectations before coming into the program, and what have you learned this year that you didn't know previously?
My expectations, I had a bit because I've had some friends who have been in illustration before, and they told me that was a lot about like focusing on the fundamentals in the first year, and I very much expected that going in, and I was not surprised with what I ended up with, which was a lot of the fundamentals and stuff, especially going from the second year of VCA, Visual and Creative Arts. I had a lot more creative freedom and everything, and then returning kind of back to square one for going back to the art fundamentals. It was a little creatively taxing just because I didn't get to express myself in that way, but it was still very good to revisit the fundamentals as it's such an important like cornerstone of creating art.
Yeah, when I look at different art forms, right, I like to think about the workflow that goes into it. So can you tell me a little bit about what the workflow on illustration is like?
Workflow for illustration. It's very much a focus on like the process and creation of things. I remember a huge emphasis was put on thumbnailing and just creating the roughs of everything. I know for I have a class called Principles of Design, where it was a lot more graphic, like graphic design stuff, where we would be taken week by week, where we would start with the thumbnails, we'd review with our professor, and then we go to the rough stage, and then just go through that entire process. It's really about building that up so that when we're actually put into the workforce, we're prepared to work with like our clientele and just understand that process so that we can communicate people with best as possible.
Nice. So what are the different approaches that you have in illustration? Because we have different genres in photography. So what are the different approaches in illustration, if there is any?
Different approaches. Well, there's for the different classes, I would say there's specific approaches. Like for the graphic design class, you're really looking for what the clientele want, while still trying to put creativity in it, but also thinking a lot more about like the composition of everything. But that's important for all cornerstones. For stuff like my what's the name of that? And for the stuff in my conceptual class, it was a lot more what I wanted to do for the process, and just creating something that really identified with me. So if I were to go more in like a fine arts direction, that would be a very valuable thing just to have that and know that. But I don't know, it's just thinking about the clientele, where conceptual is more just what you want to do, what inspires you, and really experimenting with a whole bunch of different medias.
So if a student is coming and planning to get into illustration, what are some things that they have to keep in mind before getting to the program? How do they prepare to get into the program? Like, what should the portfolio have?
Portfolio, that's a whole nother thing, because it took me when coming straight out of high school, I didn't try to get into the program because I didn't think I was prepared enough for it, because it's a very intensive program. When I went into art fundamentals, I got a lot of support figuring out the portfolio, because that is a very important part of it. Because if you cannot succeed with the portfolio, it's going to be very hard and a lot more difficult when you get into the program to succeed, because they expect you to know kind of all those basic essentials, and then they're looking to expand upon them. So when working on the portfolio, just think how well that you're like conveying the techniques that they're hoping for, and really just put the effort into drawing life. I think that was one of the biggest things, because before then I drew a lot out of my brain, but they really want you to like go out and draw stuff out in public. They want you to draw cars, they want you to draw buildings and stuff. And once you get more used to that and like the basic shapes and perspective of things, it makes drawing everything else a lot more simpler, because really everything in the world is just based on shapes, and if you have a understanding of the shapes and forms of everything, everything will become a lot easier for illustration. So I'd say really just focus on that, get people's opinions for your portfolio, and just keep working on it, as it's such an important part to get into illustration and succeed in such a thing.
So, do you get inspiration from what you see out there in the external world? Like, how do artists stay inspired? And if they go through like artistic blocks, how do you overcome that?
That's a hard thing, especially as I have felt a lot of burnout as of late. I think the most important thing is to really just find the kind of style and thing that you want to create. I remember a few years ago, I did a daily sketchbook where my plan was to do one page for every single day of the year. And I completed that for the most part. I think near November, December, everything got too much, but that really helped me just keep exploring, keep like experimenting with different things. And it really helped me land on a specific style that makes drawing and creating a lot more fun for me, because I have a lot more graphic, very Keith Haring-esque inspired style that I think that I wouldn't have had if I didn't keep pushing and experimenting. And it's also good just to keep that fun in art, because if you do not have fun in art, it just becomes work rather than art. So and I run a thing with peer mentors and my professor Kirsten called Art Hive that it runs every Wednesday here at Sheridan, but basically we just put out a whole bunch of art supplies, and the focus is to really just capture the fun in art and have that inspiration again, because art should be a fun thing, and I think it's very noticeable if you do not have that fun in art, you know?
Yeah. So what about people who are way too critical about their art, right? People who are perfectionists who always want to make things perfect, they get super critical. So what do you say to them?
I want them to tell me what is the meaning imperfect, because perfect is a funny word, because in art I don't think it really exists. It's just the way that you view things, because for traditional art, which is my preferred like medium, I like doing paintings and stuff. I don't like things being so perfect, because then it feels a lot more human, feels like a lot more creative, especially in like an industry right now that's being kind of driven by AI and driving some artists away. I think the imperfections and the humanness that we put into art really adds to it rather than take away. That's where I struggle with digital art sometimes, because I feel like I have to be so perfect, when really a lot of our professors say that digital art should feel more like traditional art with all its imperfections, and try and emulate that a traditional style more, because that's really what makes art feel alive and give it that life, you know?
Yeah, that's great, man. So right, we're coming towards the end. What would you like to say to students? If there's one thing you would like to say for a student who's getting into illustration, what would that be?
Make sure that you are enjoying the process of creating, because if you are not enjoying that process, life will become a lot harder. And I think art should really be this fun thing. So make sure that you keep drawing, make sure that you keep experimenting and going in different directions with your style, because that's where you really will find your place in the world, because art is about being yourself and sharing that with everyone else.
Hey, that's beautiful, man. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your opinions with us. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into today's episode. This has been Tanishq, your host from Sheridanlife Radio. You've been listening to the Sheridan Student Podcast. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.
Cheers.